Everything looks normal at 30,000 feet. Pilots are calm, instruments are steady, and automation quietly hums along. But industry data shows over half of major incidents begin not during takeoff, but in these trusted, silent moments during ordinary transitions that feel completely safe. How can the most dangerous moment in any flight pass unnoticed by everyone on board? The answer hides in what happens next. Landing stands out in every industry report. Over 53% of aviation accidents worldwide occur during this phase, according to IATA and Boeing data. The final approach, the flare, the touchdown, these moments attract the most attention from regulators, airlines, and the flying public. Checklists are repeated, eyes are on the runway, and every movement is deliberate. The numbers reinforce this focus. In commercial jet operations between 2014 and 2023, the landing phase accounted for 36% of fatal accidents. Takeoff, often considered risky, accounts for only 11%. Cruise, the part of flight where the seatbelt sign is off and the world below drifts by, registers just 11% of fatal accidents in commercial operations. For general aviation, the pattern shifts slightly. Night flights show the en route or cruise phase as the most accident-prone, with 28% of accidents happening there. During the day, landing once again dominates. These figures shape how the industry allocates resources, designs training, and builds trust in modern aircraft. Safety briefings, simulator sessions, and even passenger perceptions center around the idea that the most danger lies at the beginning and end of a flight. Yet this confidence in cruise and transition phases is built on more than just numbers. Modern aircraft are engineered for reliability. Redundancy is built into every system. Pilots train for years to master both normal and abnormal situations. Automation handles routine tasks with precision, freeing the crew to monitor, communicate, and plan. The system is designed to make the middle of the flight feel uneventful, almost boring. This is not an accident. The industry trusts these phases because by every visible measure they are safe. But the numbers alone do not tell the whole story. Hidden within the statistics is a gap, one that requires looking beyond the obvious and questioning what really happens when the aircraft shifts from one phase to another. Subscribe for aviation explanations without speculation. Automation in modern flight decks is not static. During transition phases, the aircraft systems can shift modes on their own, often without any alarm or audible alert. The Flight Mode Annunciator, or FMA, is the only place this change appears, a slim band of text at the top of the primary flight display. For just 10 seconds after a mode switch, the FMA highlights the new state, then returns to its standard appearance. In line operations, eye-tracking studies reveal that pilots visually verify only about 34% of these mode changes. 2 out of every 5 transitions on the FMA go completely unnoticed in real time. This is not a failure of skill or attention. The design assumes that the crew will catch the silent shift, even as workload rises. Pilots rely on their mental model of what the automation should do, not on constant scanning of the FMA. In practice, the mode control panel, the hardware used to select and change automation settings, is checked for only 40% of transitions. Formal call-outs meant to confirm mode changes happen even less often. The system's logic is precise, but its feedback is minimal. When the autopilot or auto-thrust shifts modes automatically, say from climb to altitude hold or from navigation to heading, no sound draws the crew's focus. The expectation is that the change fits the flow of flight. But if air traffic control calls or if the crew is briefing the next procedure, that 10-second window can pass unnoticed. NASA TLX workload studies show that mental demand spikes during these moments. On a scale where 8 represents a high cognitive load, transition phases routinely reach or exceed this threshold, even without any abnormal event. The result is a hidden state change. The aircraft follows its programming, but the crew's awareness lags behind. This silent gap sets the stage for later confusion as the workload continues to stack up and the system's true state drifts from what the pilots expect. Mode. Confusion is not a rare occurrence. In studies of automated flight decks, crews misinterpret the active automation mode in nearly 2 out of every 3 transitions. The system's logic remains precise, but its signals are subtle, often just a few letters at the top of the primary display. During normal operations, this information can slip past even the most vigilant crew. The reality is that modern aircraft rarely present a single, isolated mode change. Instead, 3 or more automation changes can overlap within seconds, each triggered by a combination of flight plan progress, altitude constraints, and air traffic control instructions. Simulators, the backbone of pilot training, present these transitions in isolation. The scenario is clear: one change at a time, ample opportunity to observe and respond, and a system that behaves as expected. Crews learn to trust this rhythm. In the real world, the pattern is less forgiving. Task saturation peaks as the aircraft enters a new phase: descent, climb, or approach. The autopilot may switch from navigation mode to heading mode, the auto thrust might revert to speed management, and the flight director can silently adjust its commands. Each change is technically correct, but the combination is rarely rehearsed outside the simulator. The gap between expectation and reality grows wider as workload increases. The crew believes the autopilot is following the planned route, but a silent reversion has shifted control to a different mode. The aircraft responds exactly as programmed, yet not as the crew expects. This mismatch is not a failure of skill. It is the result of a system designed to function with minimal interruption, relying on perfect interpretation of brief, easily missed cues. The more complex the transition, the greater the risk that the crew's mental model will lag behind the actual state of the automation. Subscribe for aviation explanations without speculation. At 34,000 feet, the cockpit of a modern airliner feels almost serene. The aircraft is stable, the automation is engaged, and the world outside is silent. But in certain transition phases, the geometry of flight begins to work against recovery long before anyone realizes it. The AirAsia QZ8501 accident illustrates how a small sequence of events can create a trap with no escape. The flight was cruising when a minor system fault led to a series of actions in the cockpit. The autopilot disengaged, and the aircraft's flight control law shifted, changing the way the controls responded. The captain and first officer both acted, but their inputs conflicted. The aircraft banked sharply, then pitched up. Within seconds, the airspeed surged to over 300 knots. At this altitude, with thin air and high speed, a stall is not just a loss of lift, it is a loss of options. The aircraft entered a stall from which recovery was no longer possible. Every corrective action closed another door. Reducing speed to recover lift increased the descent rate. Pulling back on the stick to raise the nose only deepened the stall. The automation responded exactly as programmed, but the system's logic offered no way out. Time, altitude, and speed all worked together to compress the window for recovery. The crew's training had not prepared them for this combination of failures under these exact conditions. Inside the cabin, the experience was almost entirely unremarkable until the very last moments. Surveys and post-incident studies show that more than 80% of passengers in similar events remain unaware that anything is wrong until the aircraft's attitude changes sharply or alarms sound. The illusion of control persists even as the geometry of flight becomes impossible to solve. The no-win scenario is not theoretical. At cruise altitude and speed, the trade-offs between energy, altitude, and workload can become unsolvable in less than a minute. The system is working, the crew is responding, yet the outcome is already determined by the unforgiving math of flight. Today's cockpit is quieter and more complex than ever. As automation deepens, silent system transitions remain the last blind spot. Each flight relies on human judgment at the edge of expectation, and progress depends on seeing what isn't announced. Subscribe for aviation explanations without speculation.